Here's Brody Brazil.
So as of 2 days ago, we got more brand new renderings for the Tampa Bay Rays future stadium at their current site, the gas plant district right next to Tropicana Field. But it brings the question, why are we seeing new renderings now? And what does it mean? Like, what comes next because these renderings just came out? As you know, over time, none of this stuff is just at random. There's always a reason. It's very specific. It's always timed out because something else is going on either in front of you or behind the scenes. Before we dive into all the details, let's take a look at the pretty parts, not just still images anymore. We've got video. A fly-in, how about that? From center field, looking at about 30,000 seats. It's pretty loud in there. All right, so we have our first official video rendering of this potential Rays stadium, which is also interesting because the Oakland A's and their ambitions in Las Vegas, they have not provided any video. The Chicago White Sox, their plans for the new ballpark at the South Loop, they've also not provided any video, but the Rays are giving us moving images in addition to some more still images. And this is the entire site, right? It's not just that square-shaped, pyramid-shaped, triangular ballpark with the roof. It's the entire district, the neighborhood, what they want to do. That's just how things go in 2024. It's never just the ballpark or the venue anymore. It's always the neighborhood around it. Here's a close-up view, which is interesting to me that it says it's only going to seat 30,000. I don't see a lot of luxury boxes here. I also see at least four maybe levels of seating. 4 levels for only 30,000 seats. And if you kind of zoom back a little bit further, look at down the first and third base lines, like past the infield. There are those different chunks of sections just kind of floating there. See where that yellow kind of canopy area is? I should have brought out the telestrator. But there's like these floating sections out there, which, again, all of this is conceptual by nature. I don't think they're doing blueprints off of this, but they are starting to get more specific, and it's just kind of weird to look at 30,000 seats so segmented like that. That looks like a much bigger stadium than just 30,000 seats. You can also obviously tell that despite the fact that people are going, wait, another Rays stadium under a roof that's fixed, it's never going to open and shut. Yeah, that is going to be the same, but the Trop compared to this, I mean, this has so much more glass. It looks to try and make that open feel to it. Maybe some of that glass opens and closes, so the roof will remain kind of like, I call it Safeco, but T-Mobile Park in Seattle, it is a retractable dome, but that left field area pretty much always stays open. And so it feels more like a carport than an actual closed dome facility. I don't know if that glass opens and shuts or if it's just glass, who knows? And climate control is obviously part of this stadium for humidity reasons too, but you can kind of see what they're trying to do here as this detail gets a little bit more designed. Another look at the area surrounding the ballpark. And it's funny, it's not really even the ballpark that's going to cause conversation and controversy. It's the surrounding area and what they do with it and who pays for it and how all this comes together. So let's get to the business side of this now, because we've looked at the pretty stuff. We've been oohed and awed by the new renderings that came out, but why did they come out on Thursday? Why 2 days ago, all of a sudden? It's been months since we've heard or seen anything about renderings or the stadium project. Here's why, all of this according to the Tampa Bay Times. As St. Petersburg and Pinellas County officials close in on negotiations with the Tampa Bay Rays for a new stadium and surrounding redevelopment, St. Petersburg City Council members on Thursday, 2 days ago, received a cache of agreements that would enforce how a new baseball stadium would be built, funded, and operated. Now, not agreements that have already been made, agreements that people hope line up and eventually go into place. There's 367 pages worth of information that they received. This wasn't just a one sheet, 367 pages. But not all the documents were ready on Thursday. A memo said 4 agreements were not included because they are still under county review, with other matters still being negotiated, including how the Rays could sell or transfer ownership rights of their team and how the team could borrow money against the agreement without city council approval. I understand you want flexibility in any deal or operation you do, but the Rays are seeming like they're asking for ultimate flexibility. Like, why even have a deal if you can sell your way out of it, change owners, or borrow money against the agreement without the approval of the people you've made the agreement with. A lot of the details remain the same in terms of the scope of the project and what we now understand. All of this, again, uncovered by the Tampa Bay Times. They're saying it's still a $1.3 billion stadium to start. The development obviously worth a lot much more than that. Those are starting numbers. 30,000 seats, which I do think is actually down. I think they initially talked about 34, 35. Now they're saying 30. The Rays are paying $700 million. Pinellas County paying $312.5 million. City of St. Petersburg, $287.5 million. This is a 30-year agreement, but as you're about to find out later, there are some provisions reportedly for the final 5 years. It's more like a 25-year agreement. Gets really weird at the end. The city is holding a June 12th workshop to try and get some answers, and that's why all of this is coming out with about 2 weeks of lead-in time, not even 2 full weeks of lead-in time, which I know some council members were a little bit upset. They don't even have the proper time to, digest 367 pages of material. They're trying to get possible votes. They're doing a workshop in June because they're trying to get possible votes by the city and the county in the month of July so that they can move forward on this. The ground is ready. There's not a lot of work to be done to prepare the site next to Tropicana Field, but they're targeting the opening still in 2028. And if that's going to happen, they need to start moving quickly. A couple different areas to focus on here, as reported by the Tampa Bay Times, including the Rays financing. They say this: the city has broken down how it plans to pay for its share of the stadium. Less is known about the Rays. Oh boy, here we go again. But the development and funding agreement notes that the team will have access to at least one loan through Major League Baseball, ongoing credit of at least $100 million for infrastructure. That's interesting, and I'll tell you why in a second. A previous draft of the agreement also referred to a league-wide credit facility of at least $90 million, but that loan does not appear in the latest version. Now, I point that out because I'm very familiar with the Oakland A's situation relocating temporarily to Sacramento and their plans ultimately to try and get to Las Vegas. Never has Major League Baseball ever been mentioned in terms of a loan or funding or financing. That's something that the NFL does, The NFL allows teams, and I don't want to be too specific here because I don't have all the details memorized. Every certain amount of years, decade or two, each team can apply for what I think is a couple $100 million from the league as a loan. The league will act as a bank for teams in specific stadium situations. That's what the NFL does. I've never heard anything about Major League Baseball doing this, and I would think that the A's would be taking advantage of something like this, that the Rays say is available to them, but I've never heard of anything like that before. The Rays must document the rest of their payment plans, including other loans and cash holdings, before the city will issue its first bonds. Basically, you got to show us your cards before we jump into this project with you. That makes sense. Why are the Rays stalling on that? Right? You would hope that with 2 weeks left, they're ready to show all of that before votes will be cast. They must also show that they've paid for at least $10 million in project costs so far. You know how to do that? Oh, look at these renderings. These cost $10 million. Told you. That seems like the easy part. But I understand why the Rays have to show what they're capable of and their plan before the city moves forward in committing the bonds. The Rays retain all revenues from naming and broadcasting rights. They would also keep all parking fees and stadium facility revenues, from ticket sales to concessions. The Rays would pay to the county a $1 million licensing fee every year for 25 years with no adjustment for inflation. And you can imagine 25 years from now, if you think $1 million is $1 million right now, it's going to seem more like $25,000 in the span of 25 years. So getting kind of a sweetheart of a deal in that situation. Looking forward, all right, so the commitment here of the Rays to actually stay with this deal now that we've moved past their financing. The non-relocation agreement says the Rays may not, quote, solicit or enter into agreements or, quote, solicit or participate in negotiations for playing team home games at any other location with one big exception. The 5 years prior to the end of the 30-year term. So they can't move prior to 30 years, but they can renegotiate things. They can start to work on what's next or what's needed to be done in 5 years. And that time is valuable to them. They can start the process in 25 years. Well, our new stadium, this one that you're seeing renderings of, it needs fixing up. We're going to come to you asking it 5 years out. We need $700 million or $1.2 billion to fix this place up in 2058 or whatever it is. A prior draft gave them only 3 years of that window. They're stretching that out to 5 already because they know that at the end of these situations, it gets a little bit messy. They want more time, which equals leverage, which equals probably getting what they want. By the way, I think later on we'll learn that the Rays will pay for everything in the stadium for 30 years, but what happens after that? When it actually needs the upgrades and things are actually breaking down after 30 years, then who pays for it? So is it really a 30-year agreement if the final 5 you can go flirt with somebody else? Interesting, right? The Rays are on the hook for all maintenance, as I said before, repair, operation, and management costs of the stadium. The operating agreement says neither the city nor the county will have any responsibility for any improvements during the 30-year term. The Rays would also pay for property insurance. That's great. What happens after 30 years? When the stadium needs it or when the stadium needs replacing? It's never the new car maintenance that you worry about. Sure, you have a warranty in the first 100,000 miles, bumper to bumper, all that stuff. But when they really get you is after 30 years and the stadium needs maintenance or upgrades. City and county perks. And I always kind of scratch my head and roll my eyes at this one. With the new agreement, the county would get a perk the city has been enjoying since 1995. A suite. A luxury suite. That's what smooths out this deal. It sweetens this whole thing up, a luxury suite. Get it? Both the city and county would get suites between the first and third base line at no cost, except for food and beverages as well as parking passes. Just throw it all in there. Don't be cheap, right? If you're going to give them the suite, give them a $500, $1,000 budget per game of allowance. Give them, what does parking passes cost? Come on. The city would receive 10 additional complimentary field level seats for all ticketed events. 10 tickets for every event. This is the kind of stuff, though, I tell you, that greases wheels, that makes a difference, that gets politicians moving. This is the most minimal cost to a professional sports team. They hand out comps. You know what comps are? Complimentary tickets to family members, media people, all friends and whatever. There are hundreds of tickets always set aside by every team for every game all the time, just in case. So handing out 10 to the city and or county, it's just so pointless. This is not even a big deal, but some people think it's a big deal. The operating agreement says the Rays would work with team broadcasters to refer to the stadium location as St. Pete or St. Petersburg. Right? Like the city is big on this. They want to get their money's worth out of it. The Rays would also seek all necessary MLB approvals to allow team uniforms to include St. Petersburg during at least one home game. That's weird. So you need to have one jersey for one night that says St. Petersburg on it? That's a weird request. Sports don't typically work that way. Also, if the name of your team is the Tampa Bay Rays, and most broadcasters, such as myself, heck, we just finished covering a series between the Oakland A's and Tampa Bay Rays in St. Pete. Every time the start of our broadcast pops up, there's Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's how I say it. But how are you going to be called the Tampa Bay Rays who play in St. Pete? Like, it just doesn't. You're going to try and get broadcasters to do that, but you're driving them in two different directions. Those are just two weird City of St. Pete requests, in my opinion. The team would pay $400,000 per year to reimburse the city for traffic management by St. Petersburg police and city personnel. That amount would increase by 5% every year. That's good to see, covering the cost. But any cost beyond that would fall to the city. The Rays will provide at least 5,000 tickets, but not parking passes, each year to be given to low-income families via local charities, which I understand, admire, and appreciate. But 5,000 tickets over the course of 81 home dates, it's a significant amount. Let's remember, I know this is a new stadium. I know every seat will be potentially more coveted by the excitement, the honeymoon period, but that's not a lot. That's not as many as you think. 5,000 tickets per year. Remember, there can be some games where 5,000 seats are wide open. So they might take the old Thursday getaway day game and say, hey, today, 2,000 seats of those 5,000 are available. They're not going to evenly disperse those over all the games. Okay, the non-relocation agreement, we're talking about staying home here, goes through some scenarios in which the Rays might give up some of their home games to play elsewhere. You think about the baseball annual Field of Dreams game, or this year's games in London or Mexico City or in Korea. Major League Baseball teams must be willing to play up to 6 home games per year or 9 over a 3-year span at neutral sites. In one draft, the city pushed back on that, what Major League Baseball asks of all its teams, arguing that 6 neutral site games in 1 year seemed excessive. It is excessive because no team ever plays 6 games as the home team somewhere else. So I know that's being debated and time is being spent on that. You're lucky to have one team play one series as a home series away from their stadium every 5 to 10 years. It just doesn't happen that way. If the stadium and field become temporarily unplayable, say following a hurricane, which would be terrible, the Rays must try and find an alternative site in Pinellas first, then Hillsborough. So there's a scenario in which they might end up playing in Tampa after all, but that seems like the stadium might not be playable for months and years, and that would be a bad problem, considering that it's just being designed. So what's missing from these 350-plus pages? Well, an earlier draft of the operating agreement included a section outlining the circumstances under which the Rays' end of the deal could be transferred to another party. Those included a sale of 50% or more of the team, which would not require city or county approval. The Rays can sell themselves out of this deal without the city's or the county's approval. In the latest version of the agreement, that section has been omitted with a note that said discussions are ongoing and that the section will be, quote, added before the city and county's final approval of this agreement. So here we go again with all the late breaking stuff. Here's what you need to know. Think about this, study it, and then we're going to schedule this in July and cram it all in at the last minute, say vote on it, hurry up. That's how a lot of this stuff goes. What's also missing, agreements between St. Petersburg and Pinellas County need to be amended to move the stadium. The county owns the land under the stadium and leases it to the city to manage. Those documents are still being finalized, and it's unclear whether City Council will see those by June 12th. So they've got to get to June 12th in terms of that study session, which they're trying to set up so they can have decisions in July so that they can move forward with design, implementation, construction, and I would imagine groundbreaking pretty soon. It's like a 36-month process to build a big league ballpark, and if you want it open by 2028, well, the start of 2025 in the baseball season it's not that far off when you really think about it, and the rest of this summer into the winter and then the start of next year. So those are the new Rays renderings. I realize that was a lot, but that was a lot all at once. Not just the new renderings and the shiny new toys to look at, but also all of the things happening under the hood, which are also very important. It's just like a car. You can look at the outside of a car and say, wow, that's spectacular, but open the hood and you can see what's really going on with that machinery. You made it here to the end of the video. You know I really appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. That'll greatly help me and this channel. And by the way, you know I would love to see you back here next time. The way to make sure that happens is to go down there right now, hit that subscribe button. We'll do it again sometime soon.